The sun was rising over the quiet hills of planet Beyond 4. A far colony world where only a few humans lived. Captain Raynor lived alone, far from the main base. In a small outpost made of metal and glass, he was a war veteran, now retired, wanting peace. But peace was boring. So he hired a housekeeper. She came in a transport ship with no name, tall, silent, with blue skin and silver eyes. Her name was Lyra. She said very little, only nodded when spoken to. Raynor was surprised when he saw her file, said she was half human. Half Velari. The Velari were an old alien race, nearly wiped out in the last war. He didn't ask questions. He just wanted the place cleaned, the food made, and no trouble. For the first few days, everything was normal. Lyra worked like a machine. She didn't sleep, didn't eat. Every room sparkled. The air was always fresh, but Raynor noticed strange things. She touched the walls often, like she was feeling them. She stood at windows for long hours, staring out into the empty desert. At night, she walked the halls, barefoot and silent. He heard her steps sometimes. Soft but steady. He told himself she was just weird, but she did her job, so he ignored it. Until one night, something strange happened. Raynor went to sleep as usual. He was tired, having worked on the generator all day. His last thought before sleep was, finally, a quiet night. He was wrong. He woke suddenly in the dark. The lights were off, and the room was cold. But that wasn't what shocked him. Something heavy was pressing down on his chest. Someone was on top of him. His eyes snapped open. It was Lyra. She was kneeling on top of him, her hands on his shoulders. Her face was close, too close, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dark. He gasped, tried to push her off. "What the hell are you doing?" He shouted. She didn't move, didn't blink. Her voice was soft, calm, but strange. "It was the only way to save you," she said. "What?" He whispered, confused and shaking. "What do you mean, save me? Get off me." Lyra slowly stood up and stepped back. Raynor jumped out of bed, breathing hard. He flipped the lights on, but they didn't work. The whole power system was down. "What's going on?" he asked, backing away from her. Lyra stood still, her hands at her sides. Then she said, "Something entered the compound. Something not alive, but watching." Raynor stared at her, trying to understand. He grabbed his plasma pistol from the drawer. "Talk to me, Lyra, or I'll send you back to your people," he warned. "I have no people," she replied, her voice lower now. "I was not sent here to clean, Captain. I was sent here to protect." He felt a chill go down his spine. Protect? From what? Lyra looked out the window, her eyes shining in the dark. "They're coming," she said. "I felt the signal earlier, in the air. It came for you." "Why me?" Raynor asked, his voice shaking. "I'm just an old soldier." She looked at him, her face suddenly softer. "You are more than you think, Captain. You carry something inside you, something the galaxy forgot. They want it back, and they will not knock at the door." Raynor sat down slowly, the pistol shaking in his hand. Outside, the wind blew across the desert. But now it sounded like whispers, long and cold. Lyra walked to the door and locked it with a code Raynor didn't recognize. "Sleep now," she said. "You'll need your strength." Raynor didn't sleep that night. He just stared at the ceiling, listening and wondering what kind of danger had just entered his home. And why his new housekeeper was the only one who seemed to know what was coming. The night after Lyra's warning, Captain Raynor didn't sleep. He sat in his chair with a pistol on his lap, watching the shadows on the wall, outside. The wind howled across the sands of Beyond 4, but it wasn't just wind anymore. It was whispering, hissing, like voices speaking in a language no human should hear. Raynor told himself it was just his mind playing tricks, but deep inside, he knew something had changed. Lyra moved through the house silently. She checked every window, lock her fingers brushing the walls again. Raynor finally asked, "Why do you keep touching the walls?" She didn't look at him as she answered, "They're listening, so I must listen back." That answer didn't help Raynor feel safe. It made things worse. He decided to set up his old military surveillance system. Hidden micro cameras in the halls, corners, even outside the front door. He wanted to know what Lyra was doing at night. If she was dangerous or protecting him from something worse. The cameras recorded everything for the next 2 nights. And what Raynor saw on the 3rd morning made his blood run cold. Lyra didn't sleep, not even for a second, from midnight until morning. She stood still in the main hallway. She didn't blink, didn't move, just watched the main door. But then at exactly 2:13 a.m., something moved on the camera outside. Something tall, thin, and wrong. It had no clear shape. Just a black blur with glowing red eyes. It didn't knock, didn't try to open the door. It just stood there, inches from the metal wall. Then, slowly, it pressed its long fingers against the door, and Lyra moved, fast, like lightning. She slammed her palm onto the wall and whispered a word. A strange symbol lit up across the metal ancient, glowing golden. The creature vanished, just gone, like it was never there. Raynor paused the video, heart pounding. That thing hadn't come from this planet. It wasn't a thief or a spy, was a hunter. He turned to Lyra, who stood quietly in the kitchen. She was pouring tea like nothing had happened. Raynor showed her the footage and said, "What was that?" She didn't flinch, didn't deny it. Instead, she said, "That was the first scout. They send one before the others come." Raynor sat down, rubbing his forehead. "Why didn't you tell me something was here already?" "I didn't want to scare you," she said, calm and steady. "You were already scared." Raynor looked at her. Really looked at her this time. She wasn't just some quiet alien girl with a mop. She was trained, prepared, and deadly. "What are they?" he asked. "They're called the Neareth," she said softly. "Old things. From before your kind reached the stars, they feed on memory and life force. They hunt those who carry the signal." "The signal?" Raynor blinked. "What do you mean?" Lyra sat across from him and tapped the center of his chest. "You, Captain, carry something very old. It was placed inside your blood during the war without your knowing. You were a soldier. Chosen without being told." Raynor laughed bitterly. "I'm just a broken man trying to grow tomatoes on a dead planet." Lyra shook her head. "No, you are a beacon. And the Neareth have heard your song." Raynor felt his hands go cold. "Why didn't they come before?" "They did," she said, "but others like me stopped them. Now, I am the last." Raynor stared out the window. The desert looked empty, but it no longer felt that way. He asked the question he'd been holding in since the first night. "Why were you on top of me when I woke up?" Lyra looked down, then answered, "You stopped breathing in your sleep. They tried to pull your soul out. I interrupted them." Raynor felt a shiver crawl up his spine. "And that's going to happen again." "Yes," she said. "Tonight, that night." Raynor stayed up again, but this time he wasn't just scared, he was ready. He wore light armor, kept his pistol charged. He also moved his bed into the main room. Closer to Lyra, at exactly 2:13 a.m., the power flickered, the wind stopped completely. And something began knocking not on the door but inside the walls. Raynor pointed his weapon at the sound. Lyra stood beside him, her eyes glowing silver in the dark. And then she whispered, "They're inside." Captain Raynor had faced many things in his life. Wars, pain, betrayal, loss, but this was something else, something worse. The thing in the wall wasn't made of flesh. It moved like a shadow trapped in glass. It whispered without a mouth, and its voice scraped against his bones. Lyra stood between him and the wall. her arms wide, her body lit by a strange glow. Symbols burned across her skin like ancient tattoos. She whispered words Raynar didn't understand, and the shadows screamed and vanished into the steel. For hours, Raynar sat in silence, watching. Her work, she drew glowing lines on the floor, using her fingers. The marks stayed. Pulsing like breathing light, he wanted to ask questions, but he was too tired. Too afraid of the answers when morning finally came. Lyra walked over and placed her hand gently on his shoulder. "You survived," she said quietly. "That is good." Raynar looked around the room, still full of strange lights and alien symbols. "Why are they after me?" He asked again, "Tell me everything now." Lyra nodded. And for the first time since she arrived, she sat down beside him, not as a servant, but as someone with a story to tell. "There is something inside you," she began. "Not a weapon, not a disease, but a code, a living signal, created long ago by a species called the Vorth." Raynar blinked. The Vorth. They were wiped out centuries ago. Lyra nodded. Yes, but not before they hid their greatest gift. Or their greatest curse. She reached into her uniform and pulled out a small, clear crystal inside it. Tiny golden shapes danced and shifted. "This is what your blood is doing right now," she said. "The code inside you is alive, changing, sending out signals to anything listening." Raynar stared at the crystal, stunned. "So I'm a walking radio tower." "Exactly," Lyra said, "but not just any signal." "A key." Raynar leaned forward, confused. "A key to what?" Lyra's eyes went dark. "A machine, buried in space, lost for thousands of years. It's called the Ark of Memory. It holds everything the Vorth ever knew: technology, history, power beyond reason. But it can only be opened by the living code." Raynar laughed, but there was no joy in it. "So let me guess, whoever controls the Ark controls the future." "Yes," she said, "and that is why the Neareth are coming. They do not want to use the Ark. They want to destroy it." "Nand?" "You?" Raynar stood up and paced the room. "So someone injected me with this code during the war, without telling me?" "Yes," Lyra said. "Your squad was exposed during a mission near the ruins of Gorsha 9. Only you survived. They didn't know why, till now." He rubbed his temples, trying to calm the storm in his head. "So what happens now?" Lyra stood and walked to the wall. She placed her palm against it, and another symbol glowed. A hidden panel opened, revealing a secret compartment. Inside was a suit of armor, old but glowing with strange energy. This was built by the Valari. She said, "My people, it's made to protect the code bearer. Now it belongs to you." Raynar stepped back, shaking his head. "I'm not some chosen warrior. I fix water pipes and harvest beans." Lyra gave him a small, rare smile. "And yet, you have survived 3 Neareth visits. That means something." Raynar stared at the armor, the chest piece shaped like a shield. It looked ancient, but also powerful, like it had waited a long time for someone to wear it. "What about you?" he asked. "You're not just here to clean my floors." "No," she replied. "I was built for this task. Part soldier, part machine, part memory. I was the last gift of the Valari to protect the code carrier." You, Raynar, felt like the floor had dropped from under him. Everything he believed about his quiet, peaceful life was gone. He was part of something ancient and dangerous. And he had a housekeeper who wasn't really a housekeeper at all. She was a warrior from a dead race, guarding a human with no idea how important he was. "I don't know if I can do this," he whispered. Lyra touched his chest, right where the code lived. "You don't have to believe in yourself," she said softly. "You only need to survive. The rest will come." Outside, the sky turned red. More shadows moved across the sands, and the Ark's signal pulsed louder from within him. The sun had not yet risen over Vion 4 when the lights inside Raynor's outpost began to flicker. Then silence. No wind, no humming machines, no buzzing. Drones, just heavy, unnatural silence. Raynor opened his eyes quickly. Lyra was already standing at the door, fully alert, her hands glowing faint blue. "Don't move," she said, her voice calm but sharp. "They're here." Raynor grabbed his pistol and the armor Lyra had given him. He wasn't ready for war, but something inside him had already changed. He didn't feel helpless anymore. He felt angry. They wanted to kill him. He wanted to live. As he slid the armor over his chest, it adjusted by itself. It wrapped around his body like it knew him. The HUD inside the helmet flickered to life, showing energy levels, shield status, and red dots moving around the building. "How many?" Raynor asked. "4. Lyra said, eyes narrowed. "Scouts first. Small ones. They try to scare, test defenses." Raynor moved beside her. "Good. Let them try." Suddenly, the front wall exploded inward. Metal bent and shattered like paper. A creature leaped inside, tall, black, spiked like it was made of knives. Its eyes were burning red. Its body half visible, like a ghost and a monster combined. Raynor fired, but the energy bolts passed through it. The creature screamed a sound like a dying star and rushed at him. Lyra was faster. She tackled the creature midair, slamming it into the floor. Her hands lit up and burned symbols into its body. The creature thrashed, then shrieked and vanished into black smoke. Raynor stared, frozen. That wasn't a normal alien. That was something born in the dark. Something not meant to exist. "They don't die the way others do," Lyra said. Standing up, "You erase them, not kill." Before Raynor could respond, another scream echoed from the ceiling. The second one dropped straight onto him. But this time, the armor responded. A blue shield activated. Throwing the creature backward with a boom, Raynor raised his pistol again, aiming steady now, behind. Lyra shouted. The third scout came through the wall like smoke, heading straight for Raynor's back. Lyra tossed a glowing orb over his shoulder, exploded into a web of light. Catching the shadow midair, it hissed and vanished like fire. In water, the last creature didn't attack. It stood outside the broken wall, watching them. Then it raised its hand and pointed at Raynor. Lyra stepped forward, lifting her arms. But the creature didn't fight. It just whispered something in a broken, ancient tongue and disappeared into the morning fog. Raynor fell to his knees, sweating, heart racing. That was only 4. He asked. "Yes," Lyra said, breathing steady. "The real force is not far now." Raynor looked at the damage walls torn, smoke rising, furniture burned. His home was no longer safe. It was a battlefield now. "I'm not running," he said, slowly standing. "This is my land, my home." Lyra looked at him with quiet respect. "Then we must prepare." She walked to the control panel and opened a hidden file marked in Valari script. Raynor watched as parts of the house began to shift. Walls moved, floors opened, weapon racks rose from the ground, armor stands slid into place. A full Valari defense grid had been buried under his house this whole time. "You built all this?" he asked, amazed. "My creators did," Lyra answered, "but I maintained it in case the day ever came." And it has. Raynor touched one of the weapons. It hummed with ancient power. "What happens when they send more? They won't stop until you are dead or captured," Lyra said. "And if they get the code from your body, the Ark will be corrupted forever. The galaxy will lose its last hope." Raynor clenched his fist. He had lived quietly for years, hiding from his past. Now, the past had come knocking and brought death with it. "So we fight," he said. Lyra nodded. "We fight." That night, as Raynor stood watch beside his alien protector, he didn't feel like a retired soldier anymore. He felt like something else, something more. And far out in the desert, the Neareth gathered hundreds of them, waiting for the final order. The first attack had failed, but the war had just begun. Captain Raynor had never felt power inside his body. He had always relied on training, guns, machines, never on something living inside him. But now, every time he took a breath, he felt it. Something ancient, something awake, something calling. The day after the first attack, Raynor stood outside the broken wall. The desert was quiet again, but it didn't feel peaceful. It felt like a held breath. Waiting to be released, Lyra joined him. Her eyes focused on the sky. They're still watching. She said softly, "They won't strike again until they're sure." Raynor didn't speak. His mind was heavy with what she had said before, the code, the ark, the enemy. But there was one thing still haunting him. What did they mean? "I carry a signal," he asked. Finally, Lyra didn't answer right away. Instead, she lifted a small device from her belt and scanned his chest. A soft hum filled the air, and strange glowing patterns appeared across his skin, even through his shirt. Raynor looked down in shock. "What is that?" Lyra's voice was calm, but serious. "That's the mark." He stared at the golden shapes moving just beneath his skin. "They've been there the whole time." He whispered. "Yes," Lyra said. "They were sleeping, but the Neareth's presence has awakened them." Raynor took a step back, panic creeping in. "Is it dangerous? Will it kill me?" "No," Lyra said, stepping closer, "but it will change you." Raynor clenched his fists. "I didn't ask for this, Lyra. I didn't ask to be some key to an alien weapon." "I know," she replied gently, "but the universe does not ask. It chooses." They walked back into the main room. The Valari defense systems were still active, glowing lines running across the floor, humming softly. Raynor sat down and looked at his shaking hands. "You said I got this during a mission," he said, "but I don't remember anything." "That's because they erased it," Lyra said, sitting across from him. "The human military didn't want you to know what you carried. Too dangerous, too powerful, they used you. Then buried the truth." Raynor laughed bitterly. "Sounds about right." He reached for a cup of water, but when he touched it, the water lifted on its own, floating in the air, spinning like a ball. His eyes widened. "What the hell?" he whispered. Lyra nodded slowly. "The mark is more than a signal. It is energy, pure and living. The more danger you face, the more it responds." Raynor dropped the cup and stood up. "So, what does that mean? I'm turning into some kind of superhuman?" "No," she said. "Standing with him, you are becoming the gatekeeper, the one who can open or close the ark forever." He looked down at his chest, the glowing mark fading again. "Why me?" Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder. "Because you survived when no one else did. Because something inside you refused to die." Raynor looked into her eyes, and for the first time, he saw something there. Not just duty, not just programming, but hope. She believed in him, suddenly. An alarm blared through the base. One of the outside motion sensors had triggered. Raynor and Lyra rushed to the control screen. A figure appeared on the camera feed, walking toward the house. It wasn't a Neareth. It was human. Raynor zoomed in. A man in a tattered uniform, limping, injured, his face half burned. His voice crackled through the speaker. "Raynor, it's me. Corporal Jace. Help." Raynor froze. Jace had been one of his men, years ago, dead on. The same mission where Raynor got infected. "Impossible. It's a trick," Lyra said instantly. But Raynor hesitated. "What if it's really him?" he asked. "Then he would not be walking," she replied, her eyes cold now. "They've sent something wearing his skin to test your memory, your weakness." Raynor clenched his jaw. He watched the figure limping closer, begging for help. His hands shook, not from fear, but from fury. "They think I'll break," he said, turning to Lyra. "They think I'll let it in. Will you?" she asked. "No," Raynor growled, grabbing his rifle. Not anymore. He opened the front panel and stepped outside. The thing wearing Jace's face stopped and looked up. "Raynor," it said, voice breaking, "don't shoot, please." But Raynor saw it now, the shadow leaking from its feet, the twisted light in its eyes. The creature had copied Jace's look, but not his soul. Raynor raised the gun. "Jace died like a hero," he said. "You won't wear him like a mask." And then he pulled the trigger. A flash of light, a scream, and the thing was gone. Back inside, Lyra nodded once. "You are learning." Raynor looked at the armor glowing on the wall. He wasn't the same man anymore. The mark inside him was growing stronger, and soon the galaxy would know it. The desert sky above Vion 4 had turned black. Not from nightfall, but from something worse. A massive storm of unnatural clouds swirled in the sky, glowing with red lightning. From the edge of the canyon, shapes moved, dozens of Neareth scouts. Now larger, faster, crawling like spiders over stone. But it wasn't the creatures that made Raynor's blood freeze. It was the thing behind them, floating in the air, tall as a building, wrapped in metal and bone. The Neareth commander had arrived. Raynor stood at the edge of the outpost wall, wearing full armor, the mark on. His chest now pulsed like a second heart. His body felt stronger, his senses sharper, but still, not enough. "They're not waiting anymore," he said, eyes locked on the enemy. "They're going to break through tonight." Lyra stood beside him, calm but different. She had removed her gloves, revealing hands lined with glowing seams. Small plates of metal were sliding over her skin like armor forming from inside her body. Her eyes were brighter, her voice deeper. "I have activated final protocol," she said softly. Raynor looked at her with worry. "What does that mean?" Lyra turned to him, her silver eyes glowing like stars. "It means I will no longer hold back. It means this body will burn, but you will live." Raynor grabbed her wrist. "No, we do this together." Lyra shook her head. "I was not made to survive, Captain. I was made to protect you until my last spark." A low growl shook the ground. The first wave of creatures reached the outer defense grid. Blue walls of energy sprang up, shocking some into ash, but more kept coming. Raynor rushed to the inner controls, activating the turrets and drones. Lyra moved like lightning, firing a weapon Raynor had never seen before. A beam of light that didn't just pierce bodies, but erase them. "They're testing us again," Raynor said, shooting from behind a broken pillar. "No," Lyra replied. "They are preparing for the end." Suddenly, the commander let out a long, deep roar, a sound so strong it shook the air and made Raynor drop to his knees. From the sky, a bolt of red energy struck the base's roof. Shattering the upper dome, one of the drones exploded, and flames spread through the control room. Raynor got up, coughing. "Lyra, the shields are down on the west wall." She was already there, standing in front of it, alone, facing the incoming tide. Raynor ran to help, but something stopped him. A force field, blue and silent, blocked his path. He hit it with his fist, shouting, "Lyra, turn it off." She looked back at him with a small, sad smile. "I cannot. This is final protocol. Captain, you must not die here. No, don't do this." He screamed, hitting the barrier again and again, but Lyra turned back to the enemy, her body fully covered in metallic plates now. She looked like a warrior from legend, glowing with fire and memory. The Neareth charged, roaring, slashing with claws and black fire. Lyra stood tall, unshaken. Then she stepped forward and unleashed her core. A blast of white light exploded. From her chest, creatures burned, screamed, vanished. Even the earth cracked beneath her feet. Raynor watched, tears in his eyes, as Lyra moved like a storm, fighting alone, unstoppable. But the commander didn't stop. It floated through the flames. Its arm turned into a blade as it struck her across the chest. Lyra fell to one knee. Sparks flying from her wounds, the metal on her body began to crack. No? Raynor whispered, helpless. The force field still held him back. He pressed his hand to the glass, watching her fight. Lyra looked up, her face calm. Then she whispered one word. Now, suddenly, the mark on Raynor's chest flared like a sun. The armor on his body lit up with golden fire. The force field vanished. He ran forward without fear. The power guiding his steps, he reached Lyra, just as she fell to the ground. She looked up at him one last time, her voice faint. You are ready now? Raynor turned toward the commander. He raised his hand and the code inside him responded. A wave of golden light shot out, crashing into the beast. It screamed, twisted, and began to melt into nothing. The rest of the Nearth froze. Then ran, whatever they saw in him now. It terrified them. When the battlefield was quiet again, Raynor dropped to his knees beside Lyra's broken body. Her eyes were fading, her light dimming. You saved me, he said, voice shaking, her lips moved, barely a whisper. I saved the future, and then silence. The battlefield was quiet now. Ash floated through the morning light like snow. Pieces of broken machines and scorched black sand surrounded the outpost. The enemy was gone, but so was she. Captain Raynor sat in the center of it all, still in his glowing armor, but his heart felt heavy, cold. Lyra's broken body lay beside him, her eyes closed, her skin dim. The soft light that once glowed from her core was gone now. No spark, no sound, only stillness. He touched her hand gently. It was warm not with life, but with memory. The warrior who once stood guard at his door, who poured tea like a servant, who stood between him and death. She was gone, and yet something remained. The mark on his chest pulsed again, softly, like a heartbeat. Raynor stood up. Slow and stiff, the armor unlatched and fell away piece by piece. The light inside it faded, as if it had finished its job. He looked out at the desert. No movement, no monsters, no red sky, just silence inside the outpost. Much of the base was damaged, but one thing had survived: the panel Lyra used to monitor the system. Raynor approached it carefully, not sure why. Then he saw it blinking gently on the screen. One last message. He pressed the button. A small hologram appeared Lyra's face. Calm, kind, but different. This was a recorded message. Her voice softer than he remembered. If you are seeing this, Captain, it means I have fallen. It means you've lived, and that is what matters. Raynor's throat tightened. He stood still, listening to every word. I was never meant to last forever. I was not human, not truly alive, but you made me feel like I was. I laughed, quietly. When you gave me tea, I could not drink. I watched the sunrise with you, though I could not feel the warmth, and still I smiled. Raynor clenched his fists, looking down at the floor. His voice cracked. You were alive to me, Lyra. The code is now fully awakened inside you. You are more than just a soldier, Captain. You are the gatekeeper of memory, protector of the Ark. Others will come, some to destroy, some to follow, but the choice of what comes next belongs to you now. The screen blinked one last time, and her final words echoed through the broken room. Goodbye. Raynor, thank you for seeing me as more than a machine. The hologram faded into silence, and Raynor stood alone, eyes closed, heart full of fire and sorrow. He walked outside again, looking at the dawn breaking over the horizon, and then he saw it, right where Lyra's body had once been. A glowing flower had grown from the cracked stone. Golden petals, pulsing softly like her core once did, alive. But not normal. It felt like a seed, a signal, a promise. Raynor knelt beside it, touching one of the petals gently, he whispered. You stayed with me, didn't you? The flower pulsed brighter in response. He smiled for the first time since the battle. Not out of joy, but out of understanding. She wasn't truly gone. She had returned to the soil, to the signal, to the stars, watching still. In her own silent way, over the next few weeks, Raynor rebuilt the outpost, not just for himself, but for what would come next. He set up beacons across the valley, signals to other survivors. To those still hunted, still scared, he didn't hide the code anymore. He sent out a message across the galaxy. This is Captain Raynor. I carry the last memory of the Vorth. I am the gatekeeper, and this world is safe. He stood each day at the edge of the cliff, wearing his repaired armor, now marked with Lyra's glowing symbol, and the golden flower bloomed larger each week, now surrounded by more glowing petals, as if she was growing a field of light. One evening, as he sat watching the stars, he felt a soft breeze. Not from the desert, but from behind him. He turned, and for just a moment, he thought he saw her, standing in the doorway, smiling, silver eyes glowing in the night. He blinked, and she was gone. But the feeling remained: warmth, peace, and a voice in his memory saying, "You'll never be alone again."